Kind of the new clickbait trend is to hate on VPNs. I'm guessing it's probably pushback from all the advertising we've been inundated with from various VPN companies that haven't always been 100% on the level. In fact, it seems like the more vigorously they advertise, the more you should question them. Just so everyone knows, I don't get paid for reading out the BoxPN promos on my podcast. I only get free months of service when people sign up. It's an affiliate link, and even without that, it would still be the one I use and recommend. Outside of that, the two I would recommend are BoleVPN and BlackVPN. Those are the ones that just seem to do everything right, in my opinion. But since it seems to be getting trendy to hate on VPNs, as it's always trendy to hate on anything that gets any degree of popularity, I thought I'd talk about these and what they do and what they don't do. And see, that's the thing. Security measures are only intended to solve specific problems. I've talked about this before with DNS over HTTPS. People are hating on it for things it doesn't do when it was never intended to do those things. Every security technology needs to be evaluated in that light. So here's an article that was posted to GitHub years ago that's now being shared around a lot, and I thought I'd go through it. Let's start off with one note. The content in this post does not apply to using VPN for their intended purpose, that is, as a virtual private internal network. It only applies to using it as a glorified proxy, which is what every third-party VPN provider does. Quick history. In the past, before home internet was generally available, people who wanted to telecommute to work had to do so by dialing up to their company's server via modem. But that means that the company had to have the phone lines to handle it. If they only had 4 dial-up lines and a 5th employee tried to dial up, he got a busy signal, and he had to wait for one of the other 4 to drop off before connecting. If the company wanted to add another line, it meant not only more server hardware, but another phone connection they had to pay for. When dial-up internet came out, they figured the easiest thing to do was to use that connection instead. That way, they only needed one connection out to the internet. And so VPNs were born. You connected over the internet to your company with a secure, encrypted connection, and it's exactly as though you were on a local machine, only maybe a bit slower, but you had all the access to the file servers and everything else on the corporate network. When this author talks about people using them as proxies, he means that services like BoxPN have retooled the technology. Instead of getting you access to private network services remotely, it gives you internet access, but makes your access point to the public internet a different location from where you are now. Everything from your computer up to that point is referred to as the first mile, even though it might be hundreds or even thousands of miles, but connections along that route only see encrypted traffic and cannot tell what you're up to. The first point he makes is just ridiculous. But my provider doesn't log. There is no way for you to verify that. And of course, this is what a malicious VPN provider would claim as well. In short, the only safe assumption is that every VPN provider logs. Well, of course, you'd want a VPN provider that doesn't log, and his big point is you don't know if they're lying, but that's true of everyone you do business with. Besides, there are ways we can tell with certain providers. Private internet access has been taken into both federal and state courts several times demanding their logs, and they've successfully defended themselves by saying they just don't have any. ExpressVPN had a server seized by the Turkish government who pilfered through it and found nothing, and those are hardly the only examples. And remember that it is in a VPN provider's best interest to log their users. It lets them deflect blame to the customer if they were ever to get into legal trouble. The $10 a month that you're paying for your VPN service doesn't even pay for the lawyer's coffee, so expect them to hand you over. First of all, what kind of coffee is he buying? Second, this is blatant fear-mongering. He just doesn't understand the legal issues, or he hopes that you don't, one or the other. Avoid a VPN provider in the 5 eyes, or even the 14 eyes, and this isn't really an issue. BoxPN is located in Seychelles, and even though they're not exactly a libertarian paradise, the Seychelles is very good about privacy protections. But even in the US, there are absolutely no legal penalties whatsoever for failing to log. They can be forced to turn over whatever data they do log, but they can't be forced to log your data. That was settled in the courts long ago. What he seems to be complaining about is the fact that VPNs aren't a trustless model. But nobody said they were. What VPNs give you is the opportunity to say who you trust. Most of us don't get that with our ISP. We're stuck with Comcast or whoever provides it locally. VPN providers compete with each other all over the world. Or what if you're at a coffee shop or a hotel and you have no idea who the ISP is? You have no idea if they can be trusted or not. No, VPNs are not trustless models, and nobody said they were. But a provider would lose business if they did that. I'll believe that when Hide My Ass goes out of business. They gave up their users years ago, and this was widely publicized. The reality is that most of their customers will either not care or not even be aware of it. Really? Or maybe they just have different priorities than you. This is the authoritarian mindset that we see over and over again. This guy thinks that his subjective opinion is the one true objective fact. Maybe I care more about hiding what I'm doing from a hacker in the same hotel as me than I do hiding it from the Seychelles government. Or maybe someone's in a country that censors the internet. Or maybe you're a dissident in a country that spies on all internet traffic. In that case, maybe you don't care if a different country can see what you're doing. You're only trying to hide it from your own country. Or maybe you're using it simply to get around some sort of geo-restriction. There are tons of reasons to use a VPN that have nothing to do with whether or not the specific VPN provider is logging your data. See, that's what he doesn't get. There's a difference between masking the user and masking the user's activity. Here's a question. If VPN services are so gung-ho about logging, then why did BoxPN and a whole bunch of others shut down all of their Russian servers when Russia started mandating logging? And a couple of things about his one and only example. The Hide My Ass Lulzsec controversy was back in 2011. I mean, he couldn't find any more recent examples? Second, Hide My Ass doesn't claim to be a no-logging service. Their privacy policy specifically says that they log connection data. So, you tried to claim that we can't believe VPN providers when they say they don't log by looking at one that doesn't claim it doesn't log, and even then, you had to go back 4 years from before you wrote the article to find one. And you updated this article in October. You're actively updating this article, and you still couldn't find any others to support you? I gotta say, not looking good so far. But I pay anonymously using Bitcoin, PaySafeCard, cash, or drugs. Doesn't matter. You're still connecting to their service from your own IP, and they can log that. I don't know of any VPN provider that takes drugs, but if you pay for a VPN with crypto and give them none of your identifying information, they can see your traffic, but they can't tell who you are. Something else that cannot be said of your ISP. Your ISP even knows your physical address. Unless you somehow give the VPN provider enough information to work that out, such as your credit card information or whatever, they won't be able to tie that IP address to an actual physical address. Crypto is a good way to achieve that. But I want more security. VPNs don't provide security. They are just a glorified proxy. Just asserted with no support. VPNs have a lot of features that proxy servers don't, but I'll get more into that later. But I want more privacy. VPNs don't provide privacy. With a few exceptions detailed below, they are just a proxy. If someone wants to tap your connection, they can still do so. They just have to do so at a different point, i.e. when your traffic leaves the VPN server. He's acting like security is some kind of absolute on-off thing. It isn't. Security is about multiple different techniques securing multiple different things in multiple different places. VPNs secure the first mile. Again, no one ever claimed they secured traffic after they leave the VPN. But if you're someone in Russia and you don't want anyone in Russia looking at your traffic, you just connect to a VPN server in Germany and you're good. It all depends upon your own needs. But I want more encryption. Use SSL/TLS and HTTPS for centralized services, or end-to-end encryption for social or P2P applications. VPNs can't magically encrypt your traffic. It's simply not technically possible. If the endpoint expects plain text, there is nothing you can do about that. Here's the thing about encryption. Nothing is encrypted until it's encrypted. Once you encrypt it, it's encrypted, but not before. A big part of how people can see what you're doing locally is by spying on all this pre-encryption stuff. But with a VPN, that only happens once when you connect to the VPN. At most, they'll be able to see that you connected to a VPN, but everything else, including generally insecure things like DNS lookups, which would ordinarily be visible to everyone, are now completely hidden to anyone along the first mile. We need encryption at different layers. He says if the endpoint expects plain text, there's nothing you can do about that. But that shows complete ignorance of basic networking architecture. That just means that you're not using application layer encryption. TLS is transport layer encryption, which is what TLS stands for, transport layer security. VPNs encrypt the network layer, one layer below the transport layer. When using a VPN, the only encrypted part of the connection is from you to the VPN provider. From the VPN provider onwards, it is the same as it would have been without a VPN. So what? VPNs are not about protecting against that. They're about encrypting the first mile. This is like someone saying deadbolts on doors are useless because someone can break through your window. That's not what they're for. I mean, this is just ridiculous. It's not like without VPNs, no one can see your traffic. Your ISP can see your traffic. The people at the coffee shop can see your traffic. Sure, VPN providers only protect you on the first mile, but at least they protect you on the first mile. But I want to confuse trackers by sharing an IP address. Your IP address is a largely irrelevant metric in modern tracking systems. Really? Seriously? This has to be the most idiotic statement I've ever heard. When people are dragged into court because they violated some scribble a bureaucrat put on paper and called the law, it's the IP address they use to get you. The VPN hides this, and even if it's de-anonymized somehow, VPNs give you plausible deniability. Since a lot of different people are using that IP address, then just because you use that IP address to check your email doesn't mean you're the one who used it for these other things. Besides, just 2 paragraphs earlier, you were bemoaning about how they can steal your IP address and log it. So then it's terrible that they can get your IP, but now the IP is irrelevant? Marketers have gotten wise to these kinds of tactics. Oh my God, who is even trying to claim that VPNs protect you from marketers? This whole article is just one straw man after another. No one claims that VPNs will protect you from ad trafficking. That's what ad blockers are for. That's what the anti-tracking measures in your browser are for. Why doesn't he mention one of the big use cases a lot of people cite for it? BitTorrent. When these copyright trolls come after people, they do it based on the IP address used to connect to a BitTorrent tracker. They then go through that ISP to send their extortion letters to the user. VPNs foil that completely. So he does acknowledge 2 use cases for VPNs, but then he says, in the second case, you'd probably just want a regular proxy specifically for that traffic. Why would anyone with a brain recommend a proxy over a VPN? A proxy only secures your browser traffic or wherever you put the proxy settings. Let's consider a typical home setup. A user puts his proxy information into the browser and starts browsing. But as he browses, the DNS lookups are not going through the browser. They're going through the OS, which means those unencrypted in the clear DNS lookups are still visible to whoever you're trying to hide from. And even worse, are still able to be spoofed, redirecting you to a malicious website without you having a clue it's even happening. And what if you're running, say, the Discord app? Is that going to use the proxy, or is it connecting directly without it? How would you know? What about the Dropbox app or Google Drive? Sending all your traffic over the VPN is the point. Not only that, but proxy servers completely break the TLS security model. They're application layer services. You make the entire web request of them using their TLS, and they make the request of the website on your behalf. Proxies not only can interrupt the TLS connection, they have to in order to work. VPN providers, on the other hand, cannot see inside TLS. They're network layer services, and they just encrypt the individual network packets with no ability to intercept TLS. The reason for proxies is so that corporate IT departments can manage traffic on their own network, seeing inside people's connections to websites to prevent access to certain sites or stopping malware from downloading. I can't believe a security-conscious person is recommending proxies to secure home connections. Here's a hilarious one. If you absolutely need a VPN and you understand what its limitations are, purchase a VPS and set up your own. But wait a minute. How do you know you can trust the VPS provider? Your response to my provider doesn't log was, there's no way for you to verify that. But how can you verify that your VPS provider isn't phoning home with your data? They can keep exactly the same kind of network logs a VPN provider can. So how are they different? A VPN provider specifically seeks out those who are looking for privacy and who may thus have interesting traffic. And VPS providers don't? Really, the only way to solve this non-problem would be to purchase access to a machine at a data center and build your own VPN server using Linux or something. But then you'd have to trust the data center not to log. So why do VPN services exist? Surely they must serve some purpose, because it's easy money. Oh, of course he brings in the whole profits are evil thing, as if simply charging for your service is somehow suspicious. It's those offering free VPN services that you should question, because you have to ask, how are they paying for it if not by selling your data? Remember, if you're not paying for the service, you're not the customer. You're the product. You just set up OpenVPN on a few servers and essentially start reselling bandwidth with a markup. You can make every promise in the world because nobody can verify them. You don't even have to know what you're doing because, again, nobody can verify what you say. It is 100% snake oil. Really. I am supposed to distrust VPNs, which exist solely for the sake of security and compete with each other, more than my ISP, who was able to get an exclusive franchise agreement with my local county to be the only broadband provider? I'm supposed to trust ISPs over VPNs when ISPs have proven to be far more unreliable as far as security is concerned? Oh, but you found one VPN provider that was behaving badly. Bully for you. Funny how you had to go back to 2011 to find it. But how many times have we seen, over and over and over again, ISPs engaging in spying on their users, turning data over to the government or even corporations for purposes of legal extortion, or even selling data to advertisers? There is no absolute security. Security is about trade-offs. Do you trust your ISP or your VPN provider? Is there another VPN provider you trust more? VPNs give us a choice. We have the choice of which VPN provider we want to use, and we have the choice of when we connect to them. Well, regardless of how you connected to watch this video, thanks for watching, and please hit like and subscribe and share this video everywhere. And please go to donate.bogosity.tv where you'll find several ways to support this channel, which is becoming more and more important in this age of demonetization and shadow banning. You can donate with PayPal or crypto, become a regular supporter on Patreon or Subscribestor, or watch my content on bittubers.com, which is always monetized and never censored. Until next time, stay strong and be free.